Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Liam's First Look. And today on the show, we're going over UFC Vegas 80. We've got Bobby King Green taking on Grant Dawson. And it's honestly a fascinating lightweight matchup. Grant Dawson is a guy that historically I had been looking to fade. He was out of the Crouch Gym. He had a lot of hype behind him. He came in with this grappling and wrestling heavy game plan, but I didn't think he had the cardio to back it up. And so consistently, I was looking to get on the other side of Grant Dawson or looking to pass on his fights. I thought about fading him with Leo Santos, and I ended up cashing on a hedge bet on Grant Dawson to win in round 3 plus 1,200 in that fight. But I had several bets on Leo Santos, so I profited there, but it was a small amount because I was mostly trying to get on the other side of Dawson. But in that case, he had an opponent in Leo Santos who's older and actually had worse cardio than a guy like Grant Dawson. And so when you look at a guy like Grant Dawson today, I think he's a much different and a much better fighter than he was when he came into the UFC and than he was training under James Krause. You look at what he was able to accomplish in his recent bouts. He's been getting round 3 finishes over Jared Gordon, a guy who traditionally has very good cardio and very good grappling chops on the ground. He's a Renzo Gracie brown belt, if not black belt at this point in his career. So he's a very good grappler. He's very sound positionally. He hasn't been easy for guys to out-grapple. And that was a really impressive showing for Grant Dawson in terms of his cardio, his ability to push through that wall of being tired and feeling fatigue, but still pushing through and getting to your positions. It was a really good sign for his career and his growth and his development. You look at his teammate, Thiago Moises. He's been training at American Top Team. They seem to have developed a very close friendship, relationship, and it seems like Grant Dawson's been a massive beneficiary of that relationship in terms of having somebody that can push him in the wrestling and the grappling and keep that cardio going. And I think that's huge for him in terms of being able to compete at this upper echelon. And he's the one calling for a 5-round fight, a 5-round opportunity. And you look at historically, Bobby Green has never been a punk in the wrestling and the grappling. He went tit for tat with a guy like Clay Guida, and they're pretty close in age proximity. But the difference here is that Grant Dawson's the younger fighter. He's a little bit fresher in this spot. And I do think we've seen, unfortunately, because he's one of my favorite fighters, Bobby Green, that is, of all time in the UFC, we've seen him having that kind of slowdown, that kind of regression. And I've been watching Bobby Green since the Josh Thompson fight all the way back in the day. So people that have been watching UFC for a long time, you guys know what I'm talking about. But when we're talking about some of these newer fans, some people that are a little bit newer in the community, they might not know Bobby Green from some of that, classic work that he's done in the octagon. They might only know some of his recent performances. And so I understand why, other people might not be as, enthusiastic about a fight like this, but I love to see Bobby get big fights, big opportunities, big paydays towards the end of his career. He's fantastic at going out there and putting on a show when the fight's on the feet. It's not like he can't hang with young guys. He went with Nasrat Haqparast and gave him the absolute tour of the octagon, beat him up, posted him with the jab, kept him moving around, and just cleanly outboxed the guy who is primarily a boxer, by trade. So for me, Bobby Green can compete with young guys. The problem is the physicality, the strength. That's something that you saw so apparent in the Islam Makhachev fight, where I thought that, Bobby, historically, he's done a very good job resisting, wrestling, and grappling, creating scrambles, at least keeping the fight moving. But the way that he was so easily held down and pinned down, I know we're talking about a champion, but look at other guys in the division. Arman Sarukian, he was able to go tit for tat in the wrestling and the grappling with Islam at various points. I understand that Charles Oliveira wasn't able to do that, but I think that was more of a confidence issue. Kind of fell apart mentally in that spot, which happens. It's high level competition. He was on, foreign soil. He's trying to fight a guy who's very dangerous and very talented, who's getting the better of him. We're going to see those two guys do it again. But when you look at this on paper, you see a guy like Bobby Green, and he's just been trending in the wrong direction. I thought he was fighting a perfect fight, a near perfect fight against Drew Dober. And then he unfortunately got knocked out in that spot. And he was having so much success. I felt like he was walking him down. I felt like he was getting the better of the striking exchanges there. But unfortunately, he's at an age and a point in his career where that chin is eventually going to start to give out more frequently, and he's been knocked out in the past. And I do think that it's always possible for it to happen again in the future. Now, when I'm looking at this on paper, 37-year-old Bobby Green taking on 29-year-old in Grant Dawson. So the much younger guy here, other anthropomorphic advantages. They're going to be at a height parity here of 5'10", but Grant Dawson's got a 1-inch reach advantage here, 72 inches, looking at a 71-inch reach for Bobby King Green. So it sounds like something, where I have to come in here just leaning towards a guy like Grant Dawson, not having looked at the lines. I haven't looked at a single line on this fight card. I haven't looked into any of these matchups. I try to keep myself pretty blind to a lot of what's going on here, no line movement, this kind of stuff. So I could just give you guys my honest first opinion, just looking at these fights before I get biased by the noise. And we'll go through and do our research, our due diligence. We'll come back next week, because we have this off week in between. We'll come back next week with official picks and predictions as you expect. But I just wanted to get this out as early as possible while we have this off week. And I got to just say, Grant Dawson, his backpack is phenomenal. Somebody said it in the chat. I got to shout out everybody who's rocking with us live. First and foremost, 22 people rocking with us live. It's just after 1 a.m. local time. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. Some of the regulars here, Zen Monkey, appreciate you always rocking with us. My guy Marcus, Nubian Bookstore, make sure you check it out. Enjoying the show, he says. Appreciate you, my man. Fight Talk says, my brother, you know that. Appreciate you being here, my man. Backpack, you don't need cardio. True that. It can slow you down. It can tire you out if you don't have the conditioning in the legs, but I've seen improvements from Grant Dawson in some of those positions. It's funny. I talk about sometimes it's the bets, the best bets that you make won't always cash. And I actually pushed on one of the best bets I ever made, Ricky Glenn against this guy, Grant Dawson, when he beat his ass in round 3. So it's not like Grant Dawson is a perfect fighter, but I think right now he's a hungrier fighter. I think he's got that dog in him. I think he wants a world title. I think he's pursuing greatness. And I think that he's a really, credible challenger on the come up. And I didn't always think that, but just looking at how he's evolved and adapted his game, if you can wrestle, grapple, push the pace, and you could do it for 25 minutes, then you're a problem for anybody. I don't think he's there yet, but I think he could probably push that really hard, intense pace for probably 17, 18 minutes. And we just haven't seen a huge amount of finishing upside from a guy like Bobby Green, especially in his recent run. He was never that much of a finisher, more of a decision machine. I'm already expecting everyone to hate Grant Dawson dominating Bobby for 25, calling it boring. I wouldn't be that stunned if he finished him, Pierce. Just because we saw Bobby kind of check out in that Islam Makhachev fight. As soon as the fight's over, he picks him back up. They're walking around the octagon. I was having an argument with my roommates. He says, am I delusional for thinking Dawson runs through Gaethje and Poirier? Man, that's a big question. That's a big question right there. I think he definitely beats Poirier. I think it would be tougher for him to beat Gaethje just because Gaethje seems to want to be there more at this stage of the game. But that's a tricky one just because I feel like Dustin would give up the back. I feel like he gives up his back too easily. I feel like he's too susceptible there. He's the captain over at ATT, so I hope I'm not stirring up any trouble. But it's just one man's opinion on the internet, I suppose. And at the end of the day, we'd have to see it in the octagon. He could still get knocked the hell out. He's been chin checked before, but I just feel like overall Grant Dawson's got a horrible stylistic matchup for somebody like Poirier. And I don't think he's a great matchup for Gaethje either, but I just think Gaethje's more likely to just separate him from consciousness on the way in. Let's see. Shout out to the Dome. A lot of people from the Dome in here. The General, our guy Moyes, our guy Zach, Alex, everybody. Appreciate you guys for rocking with us. So we will keep the train rolling here, guys. But I'm seeing on Tapology as I exit the screen, big favorite odds on Grant Dawson. And frankly, that makes sense to me. I think he should win this fight a majority of the time. I think he should be able to get to takedowns. I think his youth should bail him out if he does start to tire late in this fight. I feel like he should be able to cage push, keep it close and competitive, and maybe worst case scenario, lose a couple rounds here to the king, Bobby Green. But I just can't see Bobby putting it together to win a 15-minute, segment here over the course of 25 with a guy this dangerous in the grappling, with a guy who's got this amount of pace and wrestling to bring to the table, when I do see Bobby slowing down just that ever so slight touch in the wrestling and grappling scrambles. And that's just where you're going to get eaten alive. I feel like by a guy like Grant Dawson and some guys like Ricky Glenn, part of what they offered is their big, physical, weird body that's kind of hard to control and can tire you out trying to do so. And I feel like Bobby's just got a much more traditional body type. And I feel like Grant Dawson's going to have many training partners that he can replicate what Bobby brings to the table. And American Top Team's an elite gym. So I think he's going to be doing the right work. I think they're going to get him prepared for this main event showcase. And I do expect the best performance from him in his young career. YBB says, am I late or on time? You're on time, my brother. Welcome aboard. We are just getting started here. Just finished up talking about this main event and why I feel like Grant Dawson is a deserved favorite here pre-tape. But I also will do my due diligence, of course. You know that, brother. Respect from our guy, George. Respect to you, my man. Thanks for rocking with us. He appreciates the hustle, he says. I appreciate you guys that are here. I hope that you guys could drop a like. If you don't mind, extend that little courtesy, and we will keep it rocking and rolling for everybody. Onto this co-main